I'm Amara Martin.
And I'm Kason Farley. In this edition, we tackle some extremely interesting topics.
With an ordinance passing for the possible removal of Spokane's Monahan statue, what do voters and city council think?
How should finances be taught to students? Which state is doing sexual education better, Idaho or Washington?
Are streaming services damaging local musicians? What can we do to relieve student stress? We have your answers here. You're watching TCS News Hour. Now let's head over to JoJo with our first story.
Thanks, Amara. Now we go to a controversial issue that has divided Spokane for a long time, the Monahan statue and plaque, which has controversy regarding its possibly derogatory language. Despite a robust push for removal ordinance in 2020, that effort was vetoed by then-Mayor Nadine Woodward. Today, the City Council has reopened conversation regarding the statue. We dig deeper into the varying sides of this debate.
One thing that I just continue to think about is, the false narratives that we hear about history and history being politicized. This is not that. This is a small step in righting a wrong.
That was Paul Dillon speaking on the recent ordinance passed that will give people in Spokane's community the opportunity to submit concerns relating to any institutional statements, names, or monuments if they find that they're discriminatory or cause mental pain. The Human Rights Commission and the Office of Civil Rights, Equity, and Inclusion will process these concerns and determine if complaints are valid and the best way to move forward. At the center of this ordinance lies the Monahan statue.
The Monahan statue depicts John R. Monahan fighting the indigenous inhabitants of Samoa at the Second Battle of Vallejo. Monahan was killed while attempting to rescue his commander who had been badly wounded in the battle. This act much later earned him the statue to commend him for his bravery and selflessness. The inscription reads, "During the retreat of Allied forces from the deadly fire and overwhelming number of the foe, he alone stood the fearful onslaught and sacrificed his life defending a wounded comrade, Lieutenant Philip V. Lansdale, United States Navy."
Paul Dillon was the council member who sponsored the ordinance. We asked him why he decided to bring it back after it failed to pass this last summer.
Following the discussion for a couple years about the John Monahan statue and the history behind that, and it became quite clear that there wasn't a process in the city to remove markers that were historically offensive.
Not everyone had the same opinion on this ordinance, so we also talked to Jonathan Bingle, one of the city council members, on why he voted no.
I like the idea of establishing a process for public property to be removed if the people don't want it anymore. I think that makes a lot of sense. My concerns came with, and I spoke with the Human Rights Commission, I spoke with their chair, I spoke with a number of others, and when I asked them a lot of questions about the process, okay, what happens when this happens? It was like we'll deal with that when it comes. And it's like, well, that's going to come, and so why don't we just talk about it now before we actually put this into law, because this is going to be something that comes up.
The ordinance affects many people outside of the city council, namely the Samoan and Pacific Islander people of Spokane.
So my name is Jade Falatoy. I use she, her pronouns. I work at Whitworth University. I'm in charge of a Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander scholarship program called the White and Knight to Whitworth, Hawaii. And on top of that, I'm also a resident director at Whitworth University. I saw this statue and I looked at it a little closer. And then I read the plaque and I saw all the depictions on there. I realized they're oh, this is about me and my people. And I thought about all the other Samoan people that I met who had grown up in Spokane. I thought, wow, if you grew up in a place like this, feeling like you didn't quite belong, and then there was a statue here that had said, you have never really belonged. There's a statue that said, your ancestors were savages. I'm in full support of removing it, especially because it did take us some time to figure out whose jurisdiction is the statue under and what ordinances do we need to have to get some movement going with the city council. So yeah, I'm happy that we are finally getting some actual movement on that.
While the Monahan statue is a controversy in Spokane, we are excited to see agreements reached and changes implemented in favor of the community's well-being.
We will continue to keep an eye on this story as it develops. But now, what kind of finances should we be teaching to kids? Over to Artemis and Cole with the answers.
First, who is responsible for teaching financial literacy to students? House Bill 1915 has sparked debate among teachers, students, and financial institutions alike over this hot topic. What should we teach our children about debt?
Today, we follow up with the local banking industries, Spokane teachers, and others to answer what type of educations our students should receive.
The recent Washington House Bill 1915 prompts teachers, students, civilians, and experts alike to contemplate how best to teach financial literacy in schools. Currently on the Senate floor, the bill requires high schools to teach 0.5 credits of financial education as a graduation requirement, starting for the class of 2031, this year's fifth graders. Teachers around Spokane are already creating and planning for this new change. We interviewed Matthew Filippini, a CTE teacher and the DECA advisor at Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane, who was one of the first to get a head start on a financial literacy class.
Some of the things that is taught in the personal finance class starts out real easy with budgeting and savings. It talks about the differences between credit cards, debit cards. We get into credit scores. We also talk about students preparing their taxes. And then the fun part is when they get to learn how to invest money. We also talk about one of the most important things is how to fill out your taxes. We talk about and teach how to buy a home, how to buy a car, all the different types of insurances. And then fun, but also kind of sad, we end with students filling out their will.
His co-teacher, Andrew Lipsker, has more to say. Andrew's concerned that without a literacy class, students will not understand debt or know about the opportunities available. He explains that if done well, financial literacy may just be the most important class a student will take. While we can all agree financial literacy is important for students, the question arises, how should we teach debt to students? John Maroney, who is a financial engagement manager at Numerica, includes his thoughts from a professional perspective.
So I personally, and then Numerica as a credit union, are big time supporters of the bill. So we love that idea that this would be something that is a graduation requirement for students, so that it's something that they're interacting with at an even younger age. I don't see debt as something that is inherently bad or inherently good. I think that debt is a tool, and it is a tool that can help us advance our financial situation. It can help us purchase a home to create wealth, can help us get access to an education to increase our income. So it can do amazing, powerful, and wonderful things. But just like any other tool, it's something that if we maybe don't fully understand how to utilize it, or if we use the wrong tool for the wrong job, it can really hurt us.
On the other side, Andy Buer, a veteran and a current Spokane police detective who has personally experienced the negative effects of debt, gives his point of view on the issue.
I would be in the camp that says that we should avoid debt pretty much at all costs. I think for the majority of Americans, myself included, because we live in such a culture that is so instant gratification, I think debt is very dangerous. And so teaching people or teaching kids how to budget, it would be a really important thing, because that I think is one of the building blocks of personal finance and handling your finances.
I hope that every student who takes personal finance comes out of high school ready to be financially savvy, prepared, excited about planning their financial futures, and not nervous or worried, and knowing all of their options when it comes to saving, budgeting, investing, doing their taxes, and anything money related.
No matter what your stance is on debt and credit, financial literacy is very important to teach in schools.
Historically, schools have taught our common subjects like math, science, English, and history, but many students are hoping for a change to this basic curriculum.
On this topic, we moved to Lexi, who is looking into sexual education in our Washington State Public Schools.
One of the most contested debates in education is the requirement of sex ed in schools. Experts and students share insight on how the states of Washington and Idaho differ in their approach to the topic and explore how these differences may affect students.
Across the states, sex education has been a widely controversial topic. Parents, teachers, students, and lawmakers have been working to create a curriculum that best suits their communities, but the differing opinions have made it difficult.
So I think each student is on their own journey, and human growth and development helps them feel validated in that journey and not feel so alone.
Washington legislation places the responsibility of teaching sex ed upon the school system, while Idaho legislation places the responsibility on the family. We asked Sarah Dixit, a comprehensive sex ed guest facilitator at the community school in Spokane, Washington, about her experience teaching human growth and development.
Yeah, so I think comprehensive sex ed is really beneficial for students because it's one of those things that you need to know for your whole lifespan. I do believe that all states should have comprehensive sex ed that is scientifically based, age appropriate, and inclusive, mandated.
Washington offers a mandatory comprehensive sex education program to all public students. Idaho does not require a sex education program within schools, but if taught, the program must be abstinence-based. Both institutions believe these ideals to be the best option for their students.
So what we see is that a lot of students here in Spokane might be receiving really great sex ed, whereas students in Idaho might not be, but they're going to interact with one another. So we're seeing pretty big discrepancies in what their education looks like, which can cause a lot of harm and put the burden of teaching one another on teens, which isn't the greatest.
To get a student perspective, we talked to Howell Hall, who shared his experience with comprehensive sex ed in Washington.
It went very in depth. We learned a lot. There was a lot of activities. It was very engaging for me. I knew from my passion during human growth and development that was something that I wanted to do more of and look more into. And it was something that I cared a lot about.
We also had the chance to speak to Aaron Sellers, an editor for Spokane's Range Media, a local organization which focuses on equality and inclusion in their news stories. Aaron, who was raised in Idaho, recounted their very different experiences with sex education.
Because just telling kids not to have sex isn't going to work. They're all going to do it regardless.
The comparison between Howell's experience in Washington and Aaron's in Idaho is one representation of the very types of sex education received by students across the country.
We talk about sex ed in a way that is broader and more about personal safety and romantic relationships, platonic relationships, professional relationships, familial relationships. So I think when we think about it in that way, we are constantly needing that education to understand how to interact with one another.
And my most vivid memory from getting sex ed in Idaho was, we kind of had this scare presentation of sex is bad and can give you STDs and can get you pregnant. I remember okay, if sex is this bad and this dangerous, why do people have it? And so I just remember feeling really judged for my curiosity about how sex felt. And
Washington tends to be more inclusive, from my experience at least, with just looking at our curriculum. Gender and sexuality is something that's brought up, along with contraceptives even.
And while the debate surrounding sex ed can be heard across the country, we can all agree that we want the best for the youth of today. What that is, however, continues to be contested in Idaho and Washington.
To the car behind me, I'm sorry, I need more space. It's not me, it's you. You're crowding me and I feel uncomfortable and unsafe. We need to stretch the gap between us and allow more time to react.
Tailgating leads to rear endings, which the NHTSA says accounts for 29% of U.S. car crashes and millions of injuries. The Washington DOL handbook recommends keeping 4 seconds of distance between cars, especially at high speeds. Keep your distance, save a life. Sincerely, the car in front of you. With spring approaching, ducks will soon be returning and making their way back home to our local ponds and rivers. But with ducks comes a returning desire to feed them leftover bread. But don't. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, feeding waterfowl is incredibly harmful. Bread and crackers are just empty calories, which fills birds up but provides them with no nutrition. This can easily lead to malnutrition and deformities in their wings. Even if you are feeding them healthy food, this leads to overcrowding, which causes a plethora of other issues. I'll say it again, don't feed ducks.
Over to Lydia, who has been checking out the local music scene.
Thanks, Lexi. In your pocket is access to every song in the world. And like me, you'll probably love it. But that also means that local musicians, just starting out, have a lot of competition. Let's turn now to the story of local artists, labels, and venue owners, and their experience playing locally but competing globally.
In recent years, streaming has become the leading form of music consumption, and big artists have just gotten bigger. With the rise of streaming and globally known artists, let's take a look at producing music on a local scale.
I'm Hayes Noble. I play guitar and sing.
I'm Everett Noble, and I play bass.
I've grown up with a family who's made music seem as ordinary as organized sports, in a sense that I could do either.
The streaming industry nowadays is seen as vital to artists looking to make themselves known nationwide.
It's a bummer, but they are necessary. And that's how people listen to music now. You know, people do go out and buy records, but when people listen to music in their car, they're listening on Spotify most of the time.
We asked Ryan Levy, owner of the Big Dipper, a local Spokane venue, his thoughts on streaming music.
A tough question, because I don't necessarily think that people shouldn't listen to stream music, and I definitely think that people should attend live music because of the experience that you get from that, because it is unparalleled. But I do think that streaming music is it's a necessity in this day and age.
To gain perspective on the production side of this, we asked Brett and Rose Noble of 221 Press, a local record label, their thoughts on this.
Any artist can get their music out there much cheaper and easier than ever before, but it's also overwhelming in that there's so much music. You know, there's so much. It used to be if somebody put out your record, that puts you in a different level, right? Like you had a little more clout, right? And now that's just it leveled the playing field, which is awesome. And it's especially awesome for how we approach things.
Those involved in music production, however, claim the streaming industry is a double-edged sword.
The problem with streaming services and really the internet as a whole when it comes to music, like social media and promoting yourself and stuff too, is that it's sort of a necessary evil, right? Because, you know, streaming services like Spotify, especially Spotify, have this monopoly where they can sort of just make their own rules about how artists are paid and whatnot, and artists don't really get paid appropriately for their music. They're definitely not getting paid as much as they should be.
It's caused some problems for artists that are really out there trying to live off of it. You got to be more creative and find different means to bring in revenue.
They aren't getting compensated appropriately for what they do, which is a real bummer, but that's why, you know, it's important to play out and sort of build your scene, you know.
But when it comes to directly supporting artists, there is an obvious way to help: attending live shows.
I think local concerts benefit the community in the sense not just of entertainment, but also culture.
When other bands grow, when other young bands grow, especially the young bands, that sort of helps lift up everyone in the scene, which is really cool. What do they say? A rising tide lifts all boats, right? So
I think that music can exist anywhere. It's just a matter of where they can display that for other people to enjoy.
I think it's very important to support local bands and stuff and like artists, because, you know, it grows the community together so much, and it helps more and more people get involved, and especially with all ages stuff, it gets more kids involved, which will help grow the scene and make it last for a longer time.
Because that was important to me in my life growing up, and I wouldn't be here today if I didn't go to live shows. So
I already go to local concerts, and I'm sure you do too. I am so excited to see what these young local artists like Hayes and Everett will do in the future.
We end our show with Olivia, who is reporting on ways to relieve stress.
We all know anxiety is a major topic in schools, and studies show it is on the rise among teens in America. Since the pandemic, schools have been scrambling to find solutions to this drastic increase in student mental health struggles. One approach, however, falls a little bit outside of the norm. Teens in America have a problem. 11.5% of youth are experiencing severe major depression as of 2023, according to Mental Health America. Students who are experiencing mental health issues may struggle socially, academically, and emotionally. News reports have shown extreme increases in student mental health issues, which are at an all-time high since the pandemic. This issue is extreme, but many believe that schools are being presented with an opportunity. Mindfulness meditation has been proven to be incredibly effective in children, and by integrating it into the school curriculum, schools can experience all the benefits. Hannah Talbot, founder of the Anamkara Healing Center in Spokane, Washington, had some vital insight into the benefits of mindfulness and meditation.
I think that it actually does create more community and feeling of connection and not being so alone. I think that it helps in communication, like being able to communicate how you feel and then understanding how other people feel, which sets you up to, if you know how to communicate around your emotions, then it's not so hard to, give that speech in front of the class. Like you have ways to calm yourself down, and that leads to speaking in a boardroom later. So again, these tools are paramount for kids now so that they can be successful adults later.
A yoga and mindfulness teacher at the community school also shares her experience on the subject.
It's changed the way I look at others. It's changed the way that I look at myself. It's made me more accepting of myself. And to teach others not to be critical of themselves or judge themselves or compare themselves, because that's what makes us all awesome. We're all unique and we all learn from each other. Meditation doesn't have to always just be sitting and closing your eyes. It can be laying down. But for me, a walking meditation is a good way to start the day.
When asked about their opinion on mindfulness in schools, the two had very similar views.
Well, yes, for sure. I believe mindfulness is really an important thing, especially in the high schools. You guys have so much all the time thrown at you, technology, expectations, etc. And you need time to chill. And you need time to unplug and get out of that fight or flight, because that's really detrimental to your health. So sometimes people look at rest and relax as being lazy, and it's not. It's restoring to your body. It's healthy for your body.
I think that it should be mandatory. I think that it would help our students excel. It would help them in so many ways. The statistics around kids and stress are that, our nation, America, is one of the most stressed, if not the most stressed country in the world. And so teens report being stressed about school, academics, their relationships, with friends, with family, with partners. They're navigating so much. They also report being more lonely than they've ever been in their lives. So we have these phones and these devices that seemingly keep us connected, but often make us feel less than, that make us feel actually like we're not a part of something, and we're constantly being judged. And so there's actually more stress and more disconnection happening, even though we have connection right at our fingertips.
This was Teresa's final takeaway.
Do it. It's really important.
With its growing popularity and extensive list of benefits, we may see an increase in meditation being utilized by schools in our near future.
A huge thank you to all our reporters for creating such informative content about topics that we are passionate about and consider valuable.
We hope to see you again. This is TCS News Hour. With the incredible support of KREM2 Studios in Spokane, we are the students of the community school. A huge thank you to everyone who has helped make this possible. Thanks for watching.